It's a web-based meeting, so we're operating on the following procedures. It's being audio and video recording. To ensure sound quality, please remain on mute unless you're speaking or asking a question. Don't anticipate any public hearings this evening, so I'm going to skip the rest of it and turn it over to Frank, who's here with me to start the meeting.
Hello, everybody. I guess we'll do a roll call, make sure we have a quorum. If you want to do that, Dan?
Yeah, we have Jason Porter, Les King, Singh, and Frank.
So that is a quorum.
Yes.
We can seat Jason also. Jason's the alternate. We can seat him also if we want to, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so maybe somebody want to make a motion to seat Jason?
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion. That's just a determination by membership, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah, it
I don't
is.
have my Robert's Rules of Order with me.
Yeah. Normally an alternate can be seated once you determine what you need for a quorum. That's a determination.
Yeah, well, we have a quorum without Jason. That's why I think a motion would be appropriate.
No, actually, this is Singh. Frank, I think I'm still alternate in the paper trail. So,
Oh, you are?
yeah, I don't know my appointment as a permanent member yet. So
Okay.
I think me and Jason are two alternate. Last time I checked.
So we have two
Believe so.
alternates.
Yeah.
So let's just seat the two alternates then.
Okay.
Jason and Singh are both seated as participating members this meeting. That said, I would take a motion to approve the March 16th meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second,
So
Singh.
left.
Yep.
And seconded by Singh. Any discussion on the minutes? No, okay, there being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so, any opposed? The minutes are approved from the March 16th, 2021 meeting. We do have, it looks like some communications. Do you want to do those, Dan, or Kath,
Sure.
or Deanna?
No, I'll do them. We've got a couple things. The first is a zoning referral from the town of Preston to change a few amendments to some definitions regarding farm-related housing, farms and incidental farming uses to include single-family homes and accessory apartments with accessory buildings. Kathy's not here tonight. I would have asked her to speak a little bit on it, but it doesn't seem to be anything too out of line with what already exists within the town.
Is there anything that really affects
It's not
our
affecting
zoning
Norwich.
in any way?
No.
So we just need to accept that communication. We don't need to do anything with
No.
it?
Nope. And then brief announcement, everyone that's on the CCP, or Mike Lahan's joining.
Hi, Mike.
All the CCP members, your terms have expired, so everyone needs to go on to the city's website and fill out the form to reapply. If you could do that, I'd appreciate it.
So each of us
Everybody.
have, okay.
Yeah. It
So-
was the end of February for most people.
Yeah, I thought I had expired, but I guess we hold our office until otherwise advised.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then last but not least, for communications, we have 3 award letters for length of service for Frank, Les, and Mike Lahan from the Connecticut Federation of Planning and Zoning Agencies. It's length of service awards for 12 years or more on a planning commission, zoning commission, or combined commission. And I believe Deanna may be able to speak to this. The presentation is actually tomorrow night in a meeting online.
Yeah,
So
I saw
congratulations
that.
to each one of you.
Yes, that is
Thank you.
correct. That is correct. It's tomorrow night. I verified today that the meeting that they have tomorrow night, that's when they're doing the awards. And so they didn't send out something separately about it, so I did confirm. So if you 3 are available tomorrow night to log in, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I suspect I'm not going to make it, but
Okay.
you can accept for me, Deanna.
I don't even know if I'm going to be available, so tomorrow night, but at least they will mail out your award if you're not available online.
So long as it's suitable for framing. All right, so we've received that communication.
Yep,
Any other communications not listed?
that's it.
Okay. So in the new business, we have subdivision number 433, 9 Smith Avenue, request for a two-lot subdivision, property and application of Ballard Builders LLC, Craig Ballard. It's Assessor's Map 95, Block 2, Lot 2, Zone R20.
Yes, and we have David McKay on the call, if you'd like him to present.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is David McKay. I'm a professional engineer with Boundaries LLC here on behalf of Craig Ballard of Ballard Builders LLC, who is the property owner and applicant for the proposed subdivision of 9 Smith Avenue. 9 Smith Avenue is located in the R20 zone and also within the coastal area overlay district. This is an existing 1.81 acre parcel that we're proposing to subdivide into 2 resultant lots. Lot 1 being 43,954 square feet or 1.01 acres, and Lot 2 being 34,801 square feet or 0.80 acres. So both lots are above the required minimum size for the zone. Also on the sheet, the record subdivision plan, we show the proposed quitclaim deed to the city to provide a 25-foot width from the center line to the street line along the front of the property. You can see that in the cross-hatched area. And then in the lined hatched area to the rear of the parcel, we have a proposed conservation easement. This easement is over an existing steeply sloped wooded area of the property. And the purpose of that conservation easement is to protect that steep slope, which the westerly portion of that slope does drain to the Shetucket River, which is a little bit off the screen on the abutting property. So that would protect that area from tree clearing or any potential erosion issues that could result from that. That conservation easement area over the 2 parcels is a total of 0.5 acres, and that's about 27% of the total lot area. Then also we have the natural diversity database area. That's the gray dashed line that runs through the parcel there, yes. And as a result of that, the plans were submitted to Connecticut DEEP for their review on March 17th, and we received a letter from NDDB that was submitted with the application package on March 19th, stating that they see no negative impacts as a result of this proposed project. So you can see on this plan, the development plan, the 2 single-family homes that are proposed to be developed on each resultant lot. These homes are pulled forward on the lot near the street line. The purpose of that is to minimize the amount of area disturbed in order to accomplish the development. Total area of disturbance, including clearing and pavement repairs within the roadway for the utility connections, is 0.6 acres. Each of these buildings will be served by public sewer, public water, gas, and electric from the street. Our proposed activity in order to construct these buildings within the public right-of-way include the utility service connections, the construction of new driveway aprons, the removal of the existing driveway aprons, which didn't line up quite right with the actual property lines, one of them being on the abutting property to the southeast, and then the other one just not quite lining up right with the division line. between the two proposed lots, and then restoring the sidewalks, curbing, and pavement as required to complete the utility connections. And then, so from a erosion and sedimentation control standpoint, this lot generally slopes consistently with the roadway to the north. And we've proposed a sediment fence barrier at the downhill side of each lot, and anti-tracking pad at the proposed access point for each lot, and then sediment fence around the topsoil stockpile locations, which are shown on each lot. The other details on the sheet are, thanks, Dan. So on the following sheet, the other details that we have are for the restoration of the sidewalks, the construction of the new concrete driveway aprons, paving of the driveway, and installation of new curbing where it is disturbed in order to make the utility connections. And these are all in compliance with the city's standards. And then the last sheet of our plan set is the utility details for the connections for the water services and the sewer services in accordance with Norwich Public Utilities requirements. And then you can see in the bottom right corner, that's just a excerpt from the zoning map showing the location of the property within the R20 zone, and actually the multifamily zone is on its rear line. I think that that runs through our proposal here and what we are asking approval for the two-lot subdivision.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McKay. Dan, do you have any comments regarding the application?
I'd just add that we got communication back from regarding the CAM application. It's not going to disturb anything. They have no problem with the development as proposed. I have on the screen now some comments from the city engineer, some of which are already addressed by David. The site plan I showed you, subdivision plan I showed you is updated from the original submittal, and Brian is satisfied with the comments. I'll just run through my memo real quick. As usual, it's been submitted around to multiple departments for review. Mainly just got comments from Brian on April 7th. They've been addressed. Let's see. Stockpile locations for number 3 was addressed. We asked if there are any large specimen trees should be identified and preserved. If you could speak about that, Dave. And then there's an extensive amount of dumping that's taken place on the property, as well as large quantities of construction debris, a shed, a vehicle. The commission should consider requiring the applicant to remove the dumped materials before the development of the subdivision to ensure that the debris is disposed of properly. I just mentioned that we got the CAM review back. We have, Dave, you didn't get anything back from the state archaeologist, right? Correct?
No, I have not received any correspondence from them. From the date of receipt on the certified mail that we sent them, they have had the referral for 30 days at this point.
Okay. And then what else do we have here? If you want to discuss and consider the orientation of the proposed homes to take advantage of passive solar, the conservation easement has updated language that the city sent over. Are the details for the tracking pad and the silt fence, are they updated to reflect the 2002 state guidelines?
Those should be in compliance with the guidelines, yes.
Okay, and then just basic things about ENS signature block and approval signature blocks. And then I'd ask to waive the reading of the bullet points at the end. And I'd remind the commission that first you need to make a decision whether you want to hold a public hearing or not, and then make a decision regarding approval or denial of the subdivision application tonight.
Okay, does anybody want to address the first issue as to whether we think we need a public hearing on this subdivision application? Were you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry
Yeah,
about
no-
that. Yeah, I made a motion to my dead mic. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this is Les. I would like to make a motion to that effect.
To waive the public hearing?
To waive the public hearing.
Okay.
I'll
Do
second
we
that.
need to state reasons for the waiver on the record? No.
At your at the commission's discretion.
Okay, so we have a motion to waive the public hearing. Can, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second, and any discussion on that issue? There being no discussion, I'll put it to a vote. All in favor of waiver of the public hearing in this matter, SUB number 433. All in favor of the motion?
Yes.
Aye.
Right.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that motion is carried. There will be no public hearing on this matter. That being said, then I guess we can move to a discussion of the merits of the application. Does anybody have discussion about the application, questions or concerns that they want to raise at this point?
Yeah, Frank, if I could, just a couple of procedural questions. The state archaeologist and the other departments of Norwich that have not responded yet, do we need to wait for them to respond prior to making a determination on this application?
No, I don't think that's required. And I think, is there a 30-day limit for a response for the, is that the archaeologist? If we don't have a response, we assume that they don't have any negative comments, is that it?
I would defer to Deanna if you're on. I think they have 30 days to review it, and if there's no comment, there's no comment.
Yeah, so just,
We don't have anything specifically with the state archaeologists. It's in our subdivision regulations that gives us the ability to send it to them. It's more of a courtesy because we have the map that shows it's in a sensitivity area. If you're comfortable with the way it is and that they're showing such a small land disturbance in the front, you know, that's kind of, we can follow up with Sarah Sportman, who is the archaeologist, and just kind of let her know that. But I don't think you have to wait for her. It's a courtesy that we send them over to them because we know it's in a high sensitivity area. So it's sort of up to you what you want to do at this point.
okay.
Okay,
Does
yeah.
that answer your question, Les?
Yeah. I don't have any problem going ahead. I just wanted to make sure that we don't violate anything. Now, hey, Dan, on the page that's showing on the screen, could you go back to number 1? It talks about the different departments in Norwich that take a look at it. Do we?
I think just on your memo.
Yep.
Yeah, memo. Yeah. Do we need to wait on the rest of those departments to do anything?
No. Because
Okay.
it's all served by city utilities. I've had passing conversations with the zoning officer and walked the site with the city engineer. So I'm satisfied. Not having any comment from certain people in this case is acceptable.
Okay. I'm satisfied then. Thank you.
Okay.
I just
Do you have
have
any
a-
other questions, Les?
No, that's all I have. Thank you, Frank.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or concerns at this point?
This is saying, just a question, Dan. For these kind of subdivisions, basically, is that treated as a free split or is still considered as a proper subdivision? Do we still need markers and pins and all that stuff too?
All the markers and pins have been set.
Oh, they are.
They're shown
Okay.
on the plan. Yep.
Sorry, Dan, they're proposed to be set upon completion of construction. Typically, we would set those after they're done, just in case they're damaged during work. But they're all shown as proposed to be set in accordance with the requirements for monumentation in the subdivision regulations.
And just saying, just so you know, even a free split would require that the pins be set and everything. So when it comes to you, the commission, it's almost always a subdivision. We can bring you a first cut, but it's a subdivision that the commission considers. So if it's got to this point, this means that it's not considered a first cut.
Right. Yeah, that's the difference between a free cut and a subdivision approval. Oh. Does that answer your question, Singh?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else with questions? Okay, so if nobody else has questions, does anybody have a motion regarding the application?
I would move to accept the application.
This is Jason. I'd like to second that motion.
Okay. Is that a motion to approve the application, Mike?
Yes.
With the conditions set forth in Dan's memo?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And is that your second to that then, Jason?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So we have a motion then by Mike to approve the application with conditions as set forth in Dan's memo and seconded by Jason. Any further discussion at this time? There being none, then all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion to approve the application carries and the motion is approved. The subdivision is approved with the conditions as set forth. Okay.
Thank you for your time this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McKay. Under the new business, we also have a referral from the city council, which appears to be tabled at the request of the city council.
No, it's tabled at the request of the applicant.
Oh,
So
of
we
the
just
applicant.
ask the commission to make a motion to table that.
Okay, so this is a referral regarding an ordinance providing for the abatement of real estate taxes on real property improvements and the waiver of building permit fees for the historic redevelopment and/or reuse of the Panema Mill Building Number 2, also known as 555 and 575 Norwich Avenue. And can we have a motion to table that then, please?
So moved.
Second, Singh.
Okay, so that was Jason with the motion, a second by Singh.
Les made the motion.
Oh, Les made the motion.
Yeah.
And second by Singh. There is no discussion for a motion to table, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the matter is tabled at the request of the applicant. Under old business, we have 612 West Thames Street, tree cutting in the conservation easement update. Do we have somebody here to speak on that?
I believe Joe Thoreau, who is the forester and soil scientist that was contracted to make the report, is on the call.
Yeah, that's
Mr. Ferrari?
correct, Dan.
Okay.
Okay. So would you like to report to the commission then on the status of the tree cutting in the conservation easement?
Yes, I'm going to assume you guys got copies of the report that I submitted.
Yes.
Yes, it's online, and I have it on the screen now for people to see. Yep.
Okay. Have the members had a chance to read it or no?
I did.
Frankly, I haven't had a chance to read it. I don't know about the other
Okay.
members.
Okay. Okay. I'll just try to give you the dime tour. Basically a lot of trees were cut over there. The bad news is that really, as far as volumes and stumpage values, we're not looking at a real high value, simply due to the fact that there were small, mostly all firewood-sized trees. There were only a couple, there were only like 4 trees that were actually large enough that they would be tallied as saw timber trees, which are a step more valuable than firewood-sized trees. The value that I came up with the 3 times the stumpage value applied is a whole whopping $66.84. This is not common. What a lot of people don't understand is that when foresters have to value trees that were cut, stolen, damaged, or otherwise taken off of a property, we have to use what we call stumpage values. Stumpage values are the values of those trees as they're standing in the forest, as if a private landowner was to sell those trees to a logger or to a sawmill. So that's the basic reason behind the valuation of those trees. What I really feel, as far as the easement area that was intruded on, I think the true value of that area is basically as kind of a conservation wildlife area for the most part. The time I spent poking around in there, I did see a lot of deer trails. The area is definitely frequented by a lot of small game. It's essentially kind of a wildlife corridor of sorts, where the animals move from one chunk of forest land to the other, east to west or west to east. As far as the abatement of the violation or mitigation, whatever you as a commission are looking for, I think it should be something along those lines to try to reestablish that area as a little bit better conservation area. Currently, right now, the way it's growing, there are a lot of invasive species in there. There's bittersweet and a lot of vines, and I think possibly doing some plantings or replantings of native shrubs, trees, and possibly even herbaceous materials would not be a bad idea. In my report, I did give you guys some suggestions as far as species, which are wildlife friendly type species. But I would definitely recommend that some sort of, if this was the route you guys wanted to go, I'd recommend that maybe some sort of a planting schedule be submitted for your review. That way you can kind of see what's being proposed in there and whether it's prudent or feasible for the area. That's about basically all I have. I don't know if you have any questions. I did submit some photos. I don't know how many of you actually went out to the site, but you can kind of see from the photos and some of the diagrams that I have, you can see what's going on in there and what the existing conditions are.
Who would be responsible for removing all the dead trees?
Well, actually, in my report, I actually recommended that a lot of the way they felled all those trees, they kind of just dropped them whichever way they were leaning. So you got trees pointing north, south, east, and west in there, and in some places they're all tangled together to the point where the deer can't even make it through there. So what I suggested would be to go in there and cut them up, and not necessarily remove them, but construct them and use them as a wildlife habitat. Maybe create some brush piles. There's definitely rabbits in there, small game, that type of thing. So, rather than trying to get the stuff out of there, which as far as access is concerned, it's a pretty tough site to even to get any equipment in there. So I'm almost thinking having somebody go in there, or landscaping outfit, or somebody go in there with chainsaws and they can make brush piles by hand.
So you don't recommend removing the felled trees?
No, I think it would just be, like I said, as far as trying to get them out of there. You have an intermittent water course that kind of runs from that pond, and it runs to the south down into the easement area all the way down through there, and that's one point of access. The only other point of access would be down off of Trading Cove Road, and again, there's some steep slopes in there. Again, if I was you know, if I was tasked with the job of mitigating a timber trespass in an area like that, I would go with plantings, and I would take that existing brush and those trunks to the trees, which are of minimal value, and I'd construct some habitat with them. And I think due to the fact that the overstory in that area has been removed, essentially the tree canopy, if you compare that area to the wooded section of your easement that is to the west, you can kind of, at least I seem to think that that's what it looked like before they cut the trees. The removal of that overstory is putting a ton of light now on the ground where it wasn't. So a lot of the herbaceous and shrub and vines that are there now are going to, you know, probably double in their growth rates because they're getting, you know, twice or three times as much sun as they were before. So I think if you tried to do some sort of replanting or something like that, it would be provided the species were correct for the site, I think it would grow up rather quickly.
Okay.
Mr.
Is
Chairman,
that Matt Green?
hi.
Is that Matt?
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Matt. Good.
Mr. Chairman. If I could just comment, I represent the owner of the property, and I just want to make a couple comments with respect to that. One, the first comment is we have that land for sale, and part of the concern of potential purchasers are that area gets cleaned up. And yeah, I have no problem with the brush standards, but the long trees themselves, we would like them removed. I also would like to say and understand this, and please, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the purpose of the conservation easement was not so much necessarily for the environment, so to speak, but it was more so for protection to the neighbors. Unfortunately, those trees have been felled, and some of that protection is gone, but it really wasn't for the wildlife that was in there or the species that were growing. It was more for a protection to the neighbors. And Dan, please correct me if I'm wrong in that regard. But when we had talked last time, we had discussed about trying to remove, certainly all of the big pieces of timber. Thank you.
So Matt, can I ask you a question?
Yes. You're the chair.
When you say you have buyers looking at this property, they're interested in buying the property that's subject to the easement?
Yes, they understand there's a conservation easement there. Yes. That land,
So
it's, I forget, 4+ acres. And we have a contract, and I forget, I think they've, maybe Dan or Deanna can comment if someone has spoken, has had a meeting with them with regard to their thought processes on this parcel.
So I can speak to that very quickly. I did have an inquiry, a couple of inquiries about the particular property, and it was approved as a single-family lot. And I've been very clear to people that's the only approval that it has, is that single-family lot with a conservation easement on it. It is in the multifamily zone. There is some interest in developing it as with multifamily uses on it. But of course, that would come back to the commission to do that unless they were doing like a 2-family or something. More than that, it has to come to the commission. So I do have, the people have been concerned about what this conservation easement looks like. I will tell you, Matt, that we don't get into specifically talking about wildlife, but one of the things that conservation easements we recognize is their value. In this particular case was because of the steep slopes, we were worried about encroachment to the houses down there closer on Trading Cove. But it also, we do preserve, conservation easement for multiple reasons. So the habitat, it would be something that would be a reason that we would want a conservation easement. because we don't allow for them to be any cutting or any disturbance within the conservation easement, just for that reason. We don't necessarily talk about it specifically, but the conservation easement has multiple purposes. But I think what came up in the discussion was to protect that slope. We really didn't want that slope to be disturbed with anyone in the future trying to develop down that slope, and that was one of the reasons.
What percentage of the lot is covered by the easement?
I don't have the map in front of me. I don't know if Dan has that handy anywhere to show the map, or it was the whole back of the property, Frank, that was the slope going down, and it wrapped around behind the condominiums.
Yeah, I wouldn't think
Okay.
it was more than 10 or maybe 10%, maybe.
Is subject to the easement?
You gotta figure, let's see, it was 4 acres. It's, yeah.
So, who did all the cutting? Was it the owner?
It was Coveview.
Yes, so let's refresh this. This is Dan doesn't show the easement though on this map.
Yeah.
So,
The easement
go ahead,
basically,
Deanna.
the easement basically goes across, Dan, if you can use your pointer on this and kind of show where it goes basically along the bottom and includes that. In the Cove View area, the condos, where that is they cut below in that area down in here. Down here.
Yeah. Down here.
But it was a pretty significant conservation easement because of the slopes being so steep, and that's why.
And is it the condo association that owns the lot?
No. They thought there was, Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about that? There was a misunderstanding. That's why, if you want to refresh everyone about that.
Sure. When the condo association, to make a long story short, my client was also was one of the developers of, or subsequent developer of Coveview Towers. But this has always been a separate lot. And then, so we got the subdivision approval, and for some reason, Coveview Towers thought that this was their land, and when my client was no longer involved with Coveview Towers, again, they didn't consult with my client, they thought it was their land, and they went and they cut these trees as a way to give them a better view. And that's where the misunderstanding occurred. Attorney Chappell, I think, is on the call here too. He's indicated, and I don't need to speak for him, but he's indicated that in a past meeting that Coveview Towers accepts responsibility, is willing to do what is necessary to remedy this. And I think we're all working together to accomplish that at this particular time.
We are, right? Thank you for that, Matt.
Mr. Thoreau, I have a question for you. I don't know if you
So,
can hear.
hang on, Deanna. Can we hear from Attorney Chappell, please?
Yes.
So,
And then you can ask your question.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Coveview has authorized, and we've promised to pay for Mr. Thoreau's report. So I would ask, for a copy of an invoice, and we get that paid. In terms of the cutting, I think, I'm saying this, but you've all lived this longer. There are a lot more trees down than my people cut, if you will, or the contractor cut. And I think that the report references them as historic and not recent. And so, I just want to have that out there because the pictures do look pretty bad. The other thing that I've discussed with property management, I think Michael G is on the phone as well.
Yep, I'm here.
From Cove. Thanks, Mike. And one issue that also unfortunately has to be accounted for is the fact that these it's going to be tough to clear those trees given where they are because of the slope that's been discussed, and even dragging them out, for lack of a better term, through the neighbors' yards. It's not feasible. I'm told it's not really feasible to drag them out without really chopping them up. And I don't know if you can use small equipment or even down to wheelbarrows. But it would be a very difficult job, even for people who know what they're doing. I'm not one of those. So, I don't know what they call it, but the cut up and stack between the trees method, which they do on slopes, I've seen. I don't know if that can be part of the plan or part of the discussion, but then obviously there's going to be some replanting needed, and it'd be good to have guidance at least as to how much and where and all that kind of fun stuff. But although nobody from Cove is on a call tonight, and I can't give you a yes, we'll do every single thing, I did want to check in, obviously, and we want to work with Matt, client, and the potential buyer. We obviously want to make it better. But that's all I have, unless there's questions.
Thank you. Deanna, did you have a question for someone?
I did, for the forester. You're hearing what Attorney Matt Green's saying about, removing the trees. And I do believe that some of those trees, like you said, were historically taken down by the owners of the property and not necessarily affected by what just happened in the conservation easement. So there's some culpability, I believe, there from the original, prior to them being the other new trees being cut, the recent cutting. However, what about removing those trees and having somebody come in there with chainsaws and really cutting a log, or coming in and cutting those things up and hauling them out? Is that feasible? Because I can tell you that we have heard from neighbors on the Trading Cove side of how bad it looks as well. And I know replanting the trees is what we want, but leaving those felled trees is just, it does such an unattractive thing that it's going to take a long time before that gets established and for those trees to rot away. What do you think about that? And is it feasible?
Okay, well, I can say two things. Number one, regarding the trees that were historically cut, I did not tally any of those trees, and there really weren't that many of them. But I was easily able to discern the trees that were cut recently as opposed to the ones that were cut historically, and a lot of those were actually down further on the Trading Cove property owners' lines. But you could very easily discern the age of the cuts, by seeing how old they were. So I did not tally any of them. So the 18 trees that are actually tallied that were cut were all recently done. As far as getting the trees out, I think the only feasible option to getting the trees out would be to try to bring them down to where the easement meets Trading Cove Road there at the cul-de-sac. That's probably your only feasible point of entry due to the steep slopes that are just below the condominiums there. And again, I've been a forester for 30 years, and I've dealt with a lot of conservation easements, and usually the language in conservation easements states that there's little or no disturbance, no tree cutting, no activity, and again, it's usually conservation oriented. You're looking to protect that land as a buffer for wildlife, for aesthetics, which are obviously important here now. So if and again, you're not going to do it with wheelbarrows unless you find some really crazy people that want to go do it. You're going to need some sort of mechanized equipment to get those trees out. Some of them are pretty sizable. I think some of the bigger oaks were 15, 18 inches in diameter, and you're gonna need something with a winch, like a tree skidder or a 4-wheel drive tractors. And in my professional opinion, to get those big chunks and those pieces out of there, the place is gonna, by the time they get all of that stuff out of there, the larger pieces anyway, it's gonna look like a timber harvest. It's gonna look probably worse than it is, because the eastern part of your conservation easement was pretty much all still intact, although it's mostly invasives and shrubs, and there really isn't a tree canopy there. If that material is brought out that way, it's all that dragging. You're gonna have exposed soil. You're gonna have ENS measures in there, because if you get a 3-inch rainstorm on a skid trail that goes down through there, you could have water running down through the neighbors' yards. I guess as far as if I was going to try to do things aesthetically in there, I think it would be prudent to try to, cut up the trunks of those trees into smaller pieces as possible. Make small, if brush piles are a concern for aesthetics, I would say try to make the brush piles small. Again, the vegetation in that area, due to the amount of sun that's hitting it now, it's going to explode is what it's going to do. The red maples and sprouts that are in there that are going to sprout from the stumps that are cut, those things can grow almost 3 feet in 1 year. So I think the vegetation in there is going to thicken up quite quickly. So if you're looking to do the least invasive method of trying to make it look prettier and maximize it as a wildlife or as a conservation easement, I would say try to make small brush piles, spread the material out, cut it up with a chainsaw, and lay it down as low as possible. And I think a lot of the natural shrubs, and again, if you're doing replantings of shrubs and trees, I think that stuff will hide pretty quick. As far as forestry as far as forestry operations are concerned, the standard for timber harvesting, when they chop the tops of the trees down, it's usually about 4.5 feet, in height. And what we find out in the forest is usually within a year or more, all the fine branches and stuff rot really quickly, especially when you have good snow loads. And the material lays down, and I think with the right contractor in there doing a good job, I think you could make that area look pretty nice without trying to bring heavy machinery in there to bring wood out.
Thank you for
Okay.
that.
Thank you. Do you have more questions, Deanna?
I guess I just had one question for Attorney Chappell is when the trees were felled and what was your client's expectation of how they were going to get those trees out of there? I guess that was one question, is they're there now. What were they going to do? Just leave them there?
One, I don't know. But I think at that point they were operating under the mistaken belief that they could do that, and it was part of their. I think they were looking at it, as it's part of their land, so they didn't know about the conservation easement, because why would they if it wasn't, part of their application? So, it's different strokes, I guess. But I'm just trying to go back to, the board, the leadership, and have at least guidelines for what is expected, because, we had a contractor do this, and so we want to make the neighborhood look nice. We want to help out Matt and his client for sure. But they also don't want to rebuild the whole neighborhood. So I'm looking at if the plan by Mr. Thoreau, and I apologize if I'm butchering your name, is it can be cut up with guys with chainsaws that everyone is okay are going to be doing work on that easement at his guidance or direction or whatever you want to call it, versus dragging everything out, which seems to be it's going to lead to erosion and different or man-made brooks all of a sudden running into people's basements. That's obviously not a result we want either. So I'm trying to come up with a way that I can advise my client to do what's right for the city, for itself, for the neighborhood, and for Mr. Green and his client. So, if that's possible.
Mr. Chair, can I just, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm Matt Green here again. I apologize. After listening to Mr. Thoreau talk about cutting the timber and placing it and cleaning it up, and how other species and how other brush will grow and hide it, that would be satisfactory to my client, if understanding that and hearing Attorney Chappell and the concerns also presented by Deanna. So if it's more appropriate to cut them and keep the timber there, as long as it's in some type of uniform fashion and it meets the guidelines, and as Deanna has indicated that the neighbors are also concerned from down below of the look. I think that's just basically our concern. So if that can be all addressed, we have no objection to whatever the plan is.
No, that sounds like it makes sense. I mean, it seems like the goal for everybody is to kind of return this to its natural condition as best as possible without any further damage, and to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible in its present condition without further damaging the environment. So I guess my thought on it would be, at this point, maybe Mr. Thoreau could come up with an actual plan for that remediation, if the parties are agreeable to him doing that, to present an actual plan here to the commission, and then we can all be on the same page and move from there. That would kind of be my thought on it. Does that make sense to the parties?
Sorry.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that. I just want to get because I'm going to be asked probably in a half hour or less. How much do we owe you already, and what kind of dollars estimated for your role, Mr. Thoreau?
Right now, I don't have. I'm sorry, I don't have my invoices and stuff in front of me. I think right now I'm probably at maybe $600 as far as the assessment. I wouldn't expect doing a plan would be that again. So I think that's probably all you're looking at.
Okay. I didn't want you to tell me it was $25,000 next week.
No.
And
No.
Mr. Thoreau,
Yes.
could you come up with a estimate as to what the actual work would cost then? Or is that something you need to leave to a contractor?
Well, that's it's a tough call because, basically you're going to have to research into the different plantings and nurseries to find, the different shrubs and different trees and things like that. I'm not a landscape contractor, so I don't presume that I could be able to tell you what a contractor would charge you to plant, so many 2 or 3 inch diameter saplings and 42 small container-sized shrubs or anything like that. So, but I think what I can do is, I can give you a remediation plan with specific species numbers, so that if that list was handed, a plan, basically the remediation plan was handed to potential bidders, they could give you accurate bids.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
That would be perfect. And on top of, the association has a property manager. Mr. G is on the call, although he's pinch hitting at the moment for the full-time manager. But I think we'll be able to get the landscaping aspect once we have the plan.
Okay.
Chairman,
All right, so is that Matt?
Yeah, if you don't mind, if I ask one other question to Mr. Thoreau. I guess I'm a little bit, I don't want to say confused, but your concept of, you made reference to the natural brush that is there and some maples that are already in the ground that have I guess, come from this, and they're going to grow. I think you mentioned 3 feet a year. Are there already some trees that will be growing just from its natural habitat or from what has been there, or do you anticipate that there would be a lot of plantings?
Well, obviously, what's growing there now mainly is all herbaceous and shrub species. There are a few saplings that didn't get mowed down, but mostly what's growing there is all vegetation. Now it's at the anywhere from ground level to to 4 or 5 feet in height. So yeah, there is a lot of natural vegetation there. There's a lot of raspberries growing, those are awesome for wildlife. A lot of herbaceous stuff, but unfortunately at the same time, there are also invasive species there. So my thoughts in the plantings would be to just try to augment and reestablish the habitat that was there. Obviously there were hickory trees there. Hickory trees provide, hickory nuts for squirrels, that type of thing. So my idea with the plantings were wildlife-friendly plantings that would be not only good for wildlife, but even ornamental. So like flowering dogwoods, things like that. It's gonna cost you to plant them, but again, I think the finished product is going to be something that the neighbors down slope there can look up the hill and see something nice. It's not going to be a pristine park like it might have been prior, but yeah, as far as numbers of plantings and stuff, I don't, I really got to take a look at that. Look at the square footage. I didn't really measure the square footage of the area that was actually cut and disturbed. So that would have a lot to do with it. The overall area, how many plantings, what's growing there now. All that comes into play.
Okay, yeah. Does anybody else have any other questions at this point? So I guess what we would want to do would be to set this down again and hear back from Mr. Thoreau with his plan and take it from there.
I do have one more question for Mr. Thoreau. I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
That's your very last one.
Yeah, absolutely, I promise.
Only kidding.
Recognizing that next month is May and things are starting to grow, is there any particular, is there going to be a time when it is not productive to be planting now, that it should be, I guess, so once it gets approved in, let's say, May, now he's planting in June. Is that too late to accomplish a goal, or does that then have to be done in November or April? Or is planting in June or early July appropriate?
Right. That very, very good question. You know, depending on the species, now you got to remember that site there is a very high, rocky, dry site. The soils in there are, you know, very dry, poor soils, with the exception of the soils that are near your intermittent water course that flows downhill there. So yeah, so we're kind of, you know, we're kind of at the edge. So in theory, you know, at next month's meeting is going to be the middle of June, I assume. You guys meet once a month?
The meeting would be in
Generally,
May.
yes.
In May,
May
May 18th.
Okay, May 18th. So yeah, so you know, if you guys were to, if the commission was to approve a planting plan, you know, provided you guys could get bids and get somebody in there, you know, putting stuff in the ground, May to June is not a problem. If you wait till, you know, mid-July, August, where it's a real dry season, you know, you'd be taking somewhat of a chance. So that would be postponed to the fall, like a fall planting season, you know, September-ish. If not that, then you'd wait the next winter and you'd have to replant in the next spring. But, you know, in theory, if you guys could get bids and get somebody in there, I think it's a feasible shot.
Thank you.
Okay. Matt, does that pose a problem to you? I mean, as long as there's a plan in place, is your buyer going to be
Yeah,
okay?
I think everything I've heard tonight is satisfactory, would be satisfactory to my client and the potential purchaser.
Okay. All right. So I guess, Mr. Thoreau, if you would be able to get some kind of a plan back in time for the May meeting, that would be very helpful.
Okay, what's the date of your May meeting?
May 18th.
18th. Okay,
Is that doable?
no problem.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything on this matter? Any other discussion for now? Or can we move on at this point?
Let's move on.
All right. I'm with you, Mike. Okay, so we're all set with 612 West Thames Street for the moment. Next matter, extension requests, none. Bond reductions, none. Other business, we have a draft of open space fee language for the subdivision regulations, and as I understand that, that's a Kathy Wazika special item. Do we want to table it again? Or?
Well, we put out draft language on the website for you all to review for the open space fee and the building square footage change.
Okay.
And the next step would be, if people have reviewed it and are okay with it as it is, we'd ask that we send it along to,
The city council?
yes, for them to review.
Not to the council, to the city attorney.
To Mike,
Mike Driscoll,
okay,
the attorney.
yeah.
Mike
Mike Lahan's got a question.
Yeah, can I say something about this? This is about the worst drafted piece of zoning ordinance I've ever seen. This just leaves so many
Don't
questions.
hold back.
So many questions that are unanswered. I made, like 57 notes on them. And you can pick any paragraph. So, you get everything from the commission may require open space, but there are no standards for determining that. The commission may require the applicant to do this. And all these may businesses don't make any sense.
So can I respond to that, Michael?
Like, if who's going to determine whether there's a scenic view? Who's going to determine whether or not there are agricultural resources? If I have a 100-acre farm on Plain Hill Road that has been farmed for 100 years and I want them to subdivide it, can we say you can't do that or you have to donate all that land to the city because it's an agricultural resource? I think somebody really needs to sit down and review, all this language and see again what really makes sense. Because I don't get it. I think it's, I don't think anybody reading this who was doing a proposed subdivision would have any idea what the regulations are, because we may or may not require this, we may or may not require that. And how does anybody know? And what are the standards that you use for agricultural resources, scenic views, ridge lines? I just don't understand.
So Mike, can I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay, so a couple of things. First, that a majority of this ordinance came specifically from Preston. Kathy had sent it to me. So the language is from Preston's ordinance primarily. She thought it was a great ordinance that they have there. It would not prevent somebody from subdividing their land. It's not about the subdivision. It's about how much money we would get in open space in fee in lieu of open space. I'm just saying that's what it is about, because right now it's the $100 per lot that we get right now it really comes down to based on what the Connecticut general statutes allow, and it's in here. But again, there's a lot of methods to accept open space. We do have some of these things very similar in our regulations now, but this would basically change that and have this in its place.
Right. We're not sending to the city council just provision for determining the value or the money or how the fees are going to be calculated. We're asking them to adopt this whole ordinance.
But the ordinance is about that. The ordinance is about.
I understand the ordinance is about that, but the ordinance itself doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
I'm
not an ordinance writer, so I'm going to tell you that I'm really good at writing regulations. I don't write ordinances. So, when you guys ask for us to create.
They're exactly the same. They're exactly the same as the regulations. These are going to go into effect as part of the zoning regulations. So
yes, but
whether you write ordinances or whether you write zoning regulations, you have to see whether or not they make sense.
Yes.
And I would be glad to send these notes over to you, and I would be glad to go over it with you, but I think that, I'd be embarrassed to send this to the city council.
So Dan and I did not spend a lot of time.
Mike and Deanna, hello? Yes. Yeah, no, I was going to suggest what Mike just said, that perhaps because Mike has a lot of issues, maybe a few of us can sit down as like a subcommittee and go through Mike's suggestions and questions and try to tune this up before we send it to Mike Driscoll for his review. Maybe we could, set up a meeting, in the next week or two. Would that be okay with you, Mike?
Yeah, I can email to Diana some, the notes that I made on this thing, and then I'm willing to, spend some time going over them, and Deanna can send that to all the rest of the commission members. But I suggest that everybody try to read this carefully, and then, if my suggestions or my questions don't make any sense, then fine. But
why don't we table this business then also to get Mike's notes and input, review that, and then see if maybe we should have like a small subcommittee meeting to try to put this together in a way that Mike is much more comfortable with.
I'm supportive of that, but I also think that Kathy Wazika needs to be involved. When you guys talked about this, you basically, went along with Kathy's suggestion that she changed, that we changed this, and she says, I'll send you over the language. You guys went, okay, work with Kathy. So she sent me over the language. When I was saying, Mike, about writing I mean the top portion of a whereas, that stuff for an ordinance. I don't normally write that. So I took what Kathy had, looked at our regulations and said, well, this is somewhat contrary to what we have now. However, if this is what you want to try and this is what Preston has, we can try it. I really think it should be tabled, and Kathy can, to be honest with you, if this works in Preston and she can maybe answer your questions, Mike, that you have, I'm not sure.
Deanna, I'm just not talking about the language that, gives you the formula for increasing the fees. I'm talking to you about the whole ordinance.
right,
And the
so-
questions that arise in my mind by reading this ordinance.
Yeah, the whole ordinance
So
came.
let's get, Mike, why don't you go ahead and send them in to Deanna?
Okay.
Deanna, you can send them to Kathy, you can send a copy, I
Okay.
think maybe all of us should get a
Yep.
copy of Mike's notes, and then we can, kind of regroup from there.
I agree. I think that's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you, Michael.
All right, so, if that's agreeable, why don't we have a motion to table these matters until the next meeting, and, Mike, if you'll send your notes over to Deanna, then we can all take a fresh look at this stuff. So can we have a motion to table that then?
I'll make a motion to table.
I'll
Okay,
second.
was that Les?
Singh.
Yeah, it's less.
Les Singh? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so these matters are tabled until the May meeting, and with the understanding Mike's going to send his notes, and Deanna will circulate those. All right. And then I think that being said, we are having a POCD meeting on July 14th. Do we have a staff report?
What about the draft for the square footage, Frank? Are we not going to talk about that language?
Oh, I thought that was all included in one thing.
No, it's a second.
Two.
Oh, okay, well then, do we have a draft on that, or Mike, do you have similar issues with that, or
No,
yes or no?
no, I do
No?
not. No, I do not.
Oh, okay, okay. So all we're doing at this point is we want to send this over to Mike Driscoll
Correct.
for his city attorney review of the ordinance before it goes to the city council. So can we have a motion to do that then?
So moved.
So we have a motion, that was Mike?
Less.
Les, okay. Do we have a second?
This is Jason. I'll second that motion.
Okay, Les and Jason, any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. So then that motion carries, so the building square footage draft will be sent to Mike Driscoll for review. And heading back to the agenda again, we have a POCD meeting on July 14th. And then I was asking, do we have a staff report?
I have a couple
We're all
things just to
good?
tell you.
Okay,
Okay, so the Hale Mill project will be coming back to you. It's anticipated to be submitted this week, to be on the agenda next month. And they had submitted to SHPO the hotel project, and the State Historic Preservation Office is making changes to the architectural design and the layout, which is going to change a few things on the site plan. Probably less impact to the property, but we want you to approve that. So that's going to be coming to the commission next month. And further up, where you saw that referral from the city council that's been tabled at the request of the applicant to the council, that is for the South Mill of Panema, and the project on that South Mill had, we had given the commission had given one key an extension to their original approval as a holding, to like just basically a space holder for them, so that they would have an approval in place, because they were going for some environmental money for environmental remediation. But the project, as was approved many, many years ago, is not what they're going to be building out. So I have recommended that they come before the commission on the city plan as soon as possible, but prior to the council approving any tax abatement assessment deferral on their behalf, because it's my understanding that the assessor will not do that until there's a approved plan in place. And we know that the approved plan, previous approved plan, is not what they're building out. So I'm anticipating that project to be before you really soon too. So there's two pretty big projects on the horizon there. And we've just been really busy. West Ledge is moving along. They're going to be looking for their first COs for the first phase of that development pretty soon here, I think in the next month or so. If you hadn't had an opportunity to go by West Ledge, the old Peachtree Apartments, it's looking really great. And there was an article in the newspaper recently about it. Furthermore, expecting in May that we're going to have our offices opened again. We're not sure of the date yet, but we'll be open to the public. And we'll be giving you information about when and how we're going to be handling meetings in the city, as far as if we're going to continue remote meetings or we're going to be meeting in public with each other. And if you remember, we moved our meetings to the city hall because the building, well, we've been in the city hall, but we were no longer using our conference room in the basement, and we're going to be remodeling that because it is not handicap accessible, doesn't meet the accessibility requirements. So we will let you know how we're going to be handling meetings, or if we're going to do a combination of remote and in person. We're not sure yet, but as soon as we get updates, we'll share with you.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Anything happening with Burger King?
Oh my God, Frank, I had to ask this question, but
You know what? I reached out to the owner about 2 months ago. I think last time I gave you a report, and I have yet to hear back. So I'm not feeling super confident that they're moving forward at this point. Not saying ever, but like, you know, I think COVID really bumped them off. So maybe with everything coming back, I will try to reach out again to the owner. It's very difficult to get a hold of that owner. So it's usually by email, but I will reach out again.
and
Would
actually
it be worth calling Bill Sweeney?
Bill Sweeney's no longer involved in that project.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so, but I will tell you, talking about Mr. Sweeney, he's, just because he did I believe he's the one that, maybe not, represented, oh no, he did take testimony for these guys. These guys are supposed to be closing on the building on Church Street in June. And that project will be moving forward with the brewery.
Yeah.
So lots of good things. We're very, very busy. I'm down a building official in our office. One of them moved to Florida, so we have 2 building officials right now. Very busy at the beginning of the summer construction season. So if anyone knows of a building official or somebody looking for extra hours, we will be flexible morning, evenings, if you just want to do plan reviews. So if you know of anybody, please get the word out there.
Okay. Anybody have anything else?
the Bank of America next to proposed Burger King is closing as well. So
Oh, really?
until unless they want to convert Bank of America to the Burger King, it already has a driveway.
Oh, I didn't know
Drive-through, I mean.
that. That's the first time I heard that. Did they post that, or how did you hear that, Singh?
Well, I have my safety deposit box there. So the other day they sent me letters that they are closing that location for good.
Wow.
And, you know, so I guess that's it.
Wow.
No
That's
more
a good
Bank
place
of
to
America on that street.
I was in there about a week ago with a client who was cleaning out their safe deposit box too.
Yeah.
They have basically taken most of the stuff out of there.
Yep.
They think that by the end of May, they will have closed that branch completely.
Wow.
Well,
Well, we'll have to find a reuser for that property. We'll see. We'll start working on it. And it's my understanding that Frank at NCDC is getting close to selecting a new president over there.
we're getting there. Yeah, we had a meeting today. I suspect we'll be making an offer to someone within the next 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully.
Good.
Maybe a little longer than that, but we're down. We narrowed it down to 4 candidates, and I think today we narrowed it down to 2, and that's where we're going.
It'll be nice to have that counterpart. I know I'm working really great with Fawn, our team is, but it's really nice to have a permanent person over there. It'll be good.
Yeah, Fawn is great, but she doesn't want to be there forever.
Mm-mm.
Okay, so unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I have one more thing. Business Master Plan
Oh.
District was approved last night by the
Okay.
council. They took in all your considerations. They included all of them except for one. And that was the change that Kathy had recommended, that the list was not inclusive for the proposed uses, and that it, that it was not definitive, and so that would give more options, and the council did not like that. They thought it was too open-ended, but every other recommendation that the commission had was incorporated.
Okay. Very good. So with that, Deanna, maybe somebody can make a motion to adjourn.
This is Jason. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and attendance tonight.
All right, good
And,
night.
Night. I'm on
Good night to
vacation
you all.
next week, guys, so I'll talk to you when I get back.
Okay.